So we'll be solving May June 2025 paper 2-2, and like we discussed, we will be primarily focusing on the pseudocode questions and we'll be skipping the theoretical. So I'm trusting you guys can solve these. Okay, now we have a very basic question in front of us, so let's quickly get done with it. Okay, so the question is that we have to give the appropriate pseudocode types here. So very straightforward. The question is, we have the write here, and we have the machine code. We have the, so I'll open the insert document as well along the side. Okay, we know what the write function does. So it will take the string and it will extract the 4 characters from the rightmost side. It's written in the insert document as well, which you get in the exam. So when you have this string and you apply write and you get the 3 characters here, so you'll get the rightmost 3 characters, which would be F, G, H. So whatever you'll extract from here would be of string data type. And if you want to double check, you can also see that in the insert document, it says that it will return a string like this. Okay. Then we have the next part, which is
So today's class also cancelled now.
no, I'm here. I accidentally, I think, closed the window. So moving forward.
They all say.
Okay. So then we have the second part where we have the speed into 2.5. So any value that would be multiplied by a real value. So that we should definitely get you a real answer. So it should be real as well, because it cannot be an integer. Integer are whole numbers. You guys know that by now. Then we have the not status. So not will convert the Boolean into the opposite, right? So if you have a not true, that becomes a false, and when you say a not false, it becomes true. So this must be a Boolean value. Please write the full form, not just bool. And then it says is num check. Okay, then again you'll go to the insert document and you look for the is num function. Here you see it. It says it should be of string data type. The parameter should be of string, and the string must contain in numbers. Okay, it should be real or integer, and then the function will return boolean, right? So you don't even have to do this on your own. You can just open the insert document and then it will help you with the answer. Okay, then we have the next part. In it, the question says that there is a global array product which is used as a part of pseudocode design being developed to control the production line. Product is used to store the number of rejected items each day. The following pseudocode statement is used to assign a value to an element of the array. Okay, so this is clearly a 2D array, right? So it has 2 indices, and whenever we have 2 indices, it means that it's going to be a 2D array. So we are assigning 23 at a specific row and column, and 2D array looks like a table for the most part, something like this. So it might have 3 rows and 3 columns, or maybe 4 rows and 3 columns like this. State the number of dimensions of product. Okay, so this question is generally not well attempted, because when they're asking about the dimensions, they're asking about the total, you can say the number of indices that we have. So the dimensions are row by column, right? So it should be 2 dimension. There shouldn't be 100 or 1000 or stuff like that. Then state the total number of elements in the array product. Okay, so how do we find the total number of products? For that, you just simply multiply the number of rows with the number of columns. That's it. So this would become sorry. So this becomes, you have 99 upper bound, lower bound is 0, and 0 lower bound, and 9 upper bound. So this is a total of 100 in x, and then you have a total of 10 values in y. So if you multiply them together, you get 1000. Okay, then they're saying give the pseudocode declaration for the array product. Okay, so you know this by now. Again, the document we always use is the pseudocode guide, and we have to follow that always for this stuff. So I'll open that as well quickly. Pseudocode guide. Okay, here we go. So in this, we follow how the arrays are declared. If you do not follow this, then you lose marks. Okay, so Cambridge is very particular about the syntax, even if they claim that this is not the case. Yeah. All right, so how do we declare? So we'll write the declaration. Declaration goes something like this. We have the, we'll write declare. So declare. Then we write the name of the array, which is product in our case. Then we put a colon, then we write array, then we write the rows. Okay, so rows always come first. So the x here is rows because it is the first index that you see. So 0 colon 99 comma 0 colon 9, which is columns. So this is how it should be always. And then you have to follow it by the data type, so which would be integer in this case. And this will get you 2 marks. So you will get 1 mark for writing the correct size of the array, which should be 0 to 99. So you get 1 mark for identifying the bounds correctly. So you get 1 mark for this, and then the remaining 1 mark is for the whole syntax. Okay, so I'm skipping this. This is all definition stuff. All right, then we move on to question number 3. So in question number 3, we are supposed to generate random numbers. So the question says the algorithm is designed to generate and output. Okay, so I'll be marking the keywords as you guys already know. 2 unique random integers. Okay, so this is a lot of data in a couple of words. So they're saying 2 unique random integers. So unique means that they must not be same. So they must be different, which means that we need to put some sort of a conditional loop to ensure that they are not the same. Then each value is between -10 and +10 inclusive, which means the starting and the ending values are included as well. And then if both the integers output are negative, a third random number will be generated between 30 to 35, and then it would also be outputted. All right, so how do we generate random numbers? So for that we have the rand function, which will return you a real number, and you give an integer parameter. So if you put in 87, it will give you values from 0 till 86.9999, something like this. So if you put in rand 87, this gives you values from 0 till 86.99999, something like this, and every time it will be a new value. So now we have to generate the values between -10 and +10. So again, this was not a well attempted question. Any question that includes random and round is not then done properly, because students get confused, especially when you have to generate this negative range. Okay, in such a case, what we are supposed to do is, so from -10 to +10, if I just write random of 21, so this means I can generate values from 0 till 20.999, something like this, right? And these are supposed to be integers, so I'll just assume that it is generating from values from 0 till 20. Now the only thing you had to do was you had to subtract 10 from it, because the minimum value it's generating is 0 and the maximum value it's generating is 10. So when you subtract 10 from here, you get -10, and when you subtract 10 from 20, you get 10. So this becomes the range, -10 to +10. This was really that simple, but the only tough part here was to figure out how to actually write this 21 here. So this is how you're supposed to do it. Okay, so we'll be writing the pseudocode for this. This is question number 3. All right, so in question number 3, first of all, we have to do all the declarations and the initializations. So we have to generate 3 numbers, and all of them would be integers. So we'll declare them. So declare num1, num2, and then num3 as integer. Then how do we get the first value? So for that we get the random function in place. So num1 is equal to rand of 21 minus 10, right? But they said that random will always generate you a real number. So like the question here says that it will generate the real number. So that means that you have to convert it into an integer. How do you do that? For that you will use the int function, in which you pass in any real value and it converts it into an integer value. So that's what we'll do here. I'll just wrap this around an int function, and then it will guarantee me that it will generate a value from 0 till 20, which would be a whole number. Okay, so we're done with the first part. We are done with this part. So generate and output two unique random integers. We're done with only one number. So in order to make sure that the second number is unique, we discussed how we have to use a conditional loop. You have to keep on generating until both values are different. So for that we can use a repeat until or a while loop. Repeat until is much simpler. So we can just say repeat until the num1 is not equal to num2, right? And in that what we have to do is we have to generate number 2. We'll use the same logic because they both have to be the same in the same range. Okay, and that's it. So this loop will keep on working until both the values are not the same. And once they are different, once they are unique, then we'll output both the numbers. So we'll output num1 and we can output either we can print them in the same line or we can do it differently in different lines. So we are done with the unique and we are done with the output part, and we're done with the -10 to +10. Now we have to check if they both are negative, then we will produce a third number which would be from 30 till 35. Okay, so if you were able to do the first part, the second part is much more simpler. So for this we'll just write if we have num1 is less than 0 and num2 is also less than 0, then what we have to do is we'll say that the num3 would be again rand. Okay, so now we have to generate a number between 30 to 35. So what we have to do here is we have to use a general expression which we used above as well. That is, whenever you have to generate values between a certain range, what we do is that we generate the value between the difference of that range and then we add the starting value here. So between 30 to 35, since rand is exclusive, it doesn't include the last number, so 30 minus 35 would be 5. But if I put 5 here, it will generate values from 0 till 4, right? I don't want that. I want the values to be generated from 0 till 5. So we have to make this 6. So this generates values from 0 till 6, and then I add the starting value of the range, which would be 30. So then the minimum value this would generate would be 0, and the maximum value it will generate would be 5. So 0 plus 30 would become 30, and 30 plus 5 become 35, like this. So this is what we have to do now. So we have to put 6 and then we add 30, and again we have to make sure that these are the whole numbers. So I put it in the int function and then I do endif, and before that we have to output the num3 as well. So we output num3 like this, and that's the whole solution. Okay, so with this we are done with question 3. If you guys have any questions, let me know, otherwise we can move forward. Okay, so next part is question number 4, in which we have to draw a flowchart. Okay, so this is kind of a tricky question. We have to input 100 integer values one at a time. We have to store the first value into the first location of the array number, and then we have to store the next input value in the next unused location of the array number. Okay, now this is just kind of a trick question. So there is an array and we are saying that we have to input 100 values into it. So we can assume that the array is empty, right? So let's say we have a simple array, and you don't even need to look for if the value is unused, because one, there is no way to know if this is unused, and secondly, it's an integer array. So we do not know what exactly would be saved in an unused index, right? So keeping that in mind, let's say we have these TV shows and we have these ratings, and if I get rid of these TV shows, So the array becomes empty. But let's go with the ratings. So we have these ratings, and this is an integer array. So you can clearly see it's all unused. But since it's an integer array, the question didn't tell us that what would be the unused be specified by. Since it's not given, so we can just put one element after another. If they had said that the unused element would be represented by -99, then we would have had to check for -99s in each index. Since that is not the case, we can directly draw. And then they're saying that you have to output the number array in the opposite sequence to that in which the value were input. So if you have the array here like this, so you have index 5, then 4, then 3, 2, and 1. So we'll just do a reverse loop. Okay, so this is a 6-mark question. Let's try to draw this. Alright, so first of all, we'll have some sort of a counter here. So let's create a logic for this quickly. So we have some sort of a counter, or let's call it index, and we set it to 1, or you can start from 0 as well. And then we have to check if the count ever becomes greater than so if index, or let's call it idx. So idx is setting it to 0. If idx at any point becomes greater than 100, then that means that the loop has to end. So here we'll have some sort of a loop. Okay, we'll talk about the loop here. In flowcharts, we cannot differentiate between a while loop, a for loop, because the logic, the way of drawing them is kind of the same, except the conditions. So we loop until the index becomes greater than 100, and every time we ask the user to input a value, and then we set that input to number current index, and then we do index is equal to index plus 1. This is just a rough algorithm. Okay, now how do we create this? So in order to do that, what we have to do is we'll start. I'll set the index to 0 or to 1 or 0, whatever you want to do in that regard. So this would be a process box, and index would be set to 1. Then we check. The first condition would be, okay, there could be multiple variants of this flowchart, so you don't have to necessarily make it the same way. So the condition would be if count, or in our case we have index is, I think I should redraw it. Okay, so if index is greater than 100, okay, because we have 100 values, so it should stop at 101. Then if that is not the case, so there must be 2 arrows going out, there should be a yes, and then there should be a no. So let's make yes here, and let's make no here. So if it is greater than 100, then that means that now we have to print the array in reverse. Okay, for that to happen, we can just reuse the value of index here. So I'll go back, and this would be a process box, so a rectangle like this. So what I'll do is I'll simply set the value of index back to 100. So again, if the example here is for index 1 to 5, so I just need to set the index to 5, and then I go all the way back to 1. So I set it to 100 in this case because that is the size of the array, and then I check if at any point if index is equal to 0, right? So, or you can also write if the index is greater than equal to 0, same thing, right? Let's write it is equal to 0. Okay, as long as that is not the case, so no and yes. So when it becomes to 0, so that means you end the flowchart. And as long as that is not the case, what you have to do is we have to output the contents of the indices of the array. So we'll write output, and then we have the array or number, and we have the idx, that is the index. Okay, so we started from the rightmost side, so it will print the, let me bring back the ratings and get rid of this. Okay, so it will first print 5, then it will print 8, then 4, then 6, then 9, right? And we have to do the values in reverse. So every time we print a value, we need to decrement the value of index as well. So we make a process box and I do index is equal to index minus 1. This should be in the shape, but don't mind my drawing, it's just how it is, right? Okay, so we decrement the value of index by 1. And then you cannot leave any shape unattached to the flowchart. So now what we have to do is every time we subtract, we have to go and check if index is yet equal to 0. So we go back here. So this finishes the second part of the flowchart, which is outputting the number array in the reverse. Now we'll do the remaining part. So if the value becomes greater than, if it doesn't become greater than 100, so what we have to do is we have to ask the user to input a value. Okay, so I'll say input, let's say a number. Num would get confusing because the array is called number, so let's call it val. So we'll input the value. Okay, so now whatever the user inputs, we have to send it to the current index. So I'll just say again, this is a process box, so it should be number idx, and I'll just make it a bit wider, number index, and then val should be saved in here. And this all goes inside one process box like this. And then I increment the value of my count by 1. And from that step, so here I'll do that. So idx is equal to idx plus 1. So it gets incremented by 1. And from here, where do we have to go back? So again, every time I save a value in the array, I have to check am I at the end of the array? So it's at 1. So it's not 5. Not 5, not 5, etc. So this is what we have to do. So from here, I go all the way back up and to this point. So I'll check, is the index greater than 100 yet? If it is not, so this keeps on repeating. It's not a nice looking flowchart, but I'm pretty sure it would work properly. Okay, so this is the question 4. Then we move on to 5, so I'm skipping this. Okay, this is an interesting pseudocode question. So let's talk about this. All right. At the end of each sequence of the pictures, okay, so we should read the context before. An automated digital camera is used to take a sequence of pictures of animals in a garden. During the design of the system, a state transition is produced. Okay, so we're just taking some pictures. All right. At the end of each sequence of pictures, the time is saved as a string in the format H, M, and S. So we have hours, minutes, and seconds in 2 digits. Then this string is used to represent the time 8, 12, and 30. Okay, so 0, 8, 1, 2, and 3, 0. And then it is used to represent the time in the afternoon. So we have 1, 5, we have 2, 2, we have 3, 5. Okay, each string is stored on a new line in the text file time taken. Okay, and then an algorithm is required to process the content of the text file once it has been transferred to the computer. All right, so what would time taken look like? So again, as like I always say, we should always make dummy data for these questions. This would be question number 5, part B. Question 5, part B. And let's go ahead and create a basic file here, just for visualization purpose. Okay, so the name of the file would be timetaken.txt. For some reason it's not creating a file. Okay, let's just have this block timetaken.txt. We'll assume this is timetaken.txt, and these are some values that we have in the file. So I'll just copy these and put them there. Okay, so in every line there would be some time, which would be represented by 2 digits for each of the values, right? So maybe there is another value. There is maybe 21, then 54, and then maybe 03, like this. And there could be multiple lines of this. We do not know how many lines, so I'm just printing these values out. Okay. The algorithm is required to process the content of the time taken. For each hour when the pictures are taken, output a suitable message showing the hour and the total number of sequence of pictures taken within that hour. So that example is hour is 15, minutes is 32. Sorry, the pictures is 32. So these are the number of pictures that are taken. And then in the 18th hour, we have only one picture taken. So it says you have to assume that it contains at least one line and you have to write pseudocode for that. Okay, now in order to do such a question, what we have to do is we have to pick each R, right? So if we go to the file, what we have to do is that we have to extract the R. And how do we do that? For each time we will actually get the first two characters out. So if I just put spaces in between them, for example, like this. So if I ask you how many pictures have been taken in the 8th hour, let's say, and I'll get rid of these values. Okay, so what you're going to do, the steps would be that first of all, you have to extract the two characters from left side, right? Then before that, you're going to read the line. You're extracting two characters from the left side. Let's get rid of this. Okay, and then you are going to put a condition to check if the frequency of current R, and then you have to increment counter accordingly. So this is what you have to do. So let's say we pick up 8, and then you have to compare 8 with every other line. So 8, is this equal to 8? No, it's equal to 8. So there are 2 pictures been taken, then 3 pictures have been taken. So the output would be something like this. It would be they have given the okay, so it would be AR is 18 and total would be 3. Then I'll pick 15 and I'll compare 15 with all the other values in the file, so on and so forth. So that's the idea, right? So now we'll start the pseudocode. Again, we have to open the file, close the file, all of that stuff. So let's do this. Okay, so first we'll leave some lines for declarations. This is how you're supposed to do it in the exam as well, because you do not initially exactly know how many variables you're going to use. So leave the space and then you can always attend to it towards the end. So we're leaving declarations for now. The time taken file is called is a text file, and its name would be used multiple times, so I can just put it in a variable. Let's call it F, so it's easier to reference over and over again. So first of all, you have to open the file. So open file, again, all the syntax is in the pseudocode file. I'll just use it directly. So open file F for read, like this. And you can write the keywords in block letters or you can write in lowercase, it's up to you. I generally prefer writing in lowercase. Okay, then we have to start a loop, right? Okay, so let's read the first line and then we can start comparing it with all the other lines. So we'll write read file F and let's store the data in line. So when I say read file, it will read the first line. Again, spaces are not included, okay? So spaces are for visualization. It's not the case. All right, now in order to get the current R, so we have to get the first two characters out. And how do we do that? For that, we have the left function that is given in the insert document. And here you pass in the string and then you pass in the number of characters. So I'll use that. I'll write left. Then line is the value that we have currently right now. It should be something like 8, 12 or 30, 15, right to 35, etc. And then I write comma 2. That means I'm getting first two characters, which would be R's. So you don't need to add the comments, it's just for explanation. Okay, now we have to loop through the file. So in order to loop through the file, we simply have to use the while loop or the repeat until. So while not end of file of your current file, which is named F. So the reason I saved it in F is because I don't want to repeat time taken.txt over and over again. And this should be end while. Okay, as long as we do not reach the end of the file, which in this case would be, let's say, line 10. So what I have to do here is that I have to read a line. So I'll use read file, then F is the file name, and then I can store it in line because line is what we used before as well. So we have one R extracted here, and now we start from the first line. The reason we have done it outside is because we just wanted to compare it with the data that we currently have. So we read the line, and now since one line has been read, so the file pointer would be on this point, at this point at line 2. So this is where the file pointer would be, right? So currently line stored, this is the value stored in line. So line has 8, and then the file pointer is standing at 15. So we have read the line, and now we have to get the next R out, or the current R, or whatever you want to call it. So we have, let's call it the current R, and then this should be the next R. Okay, these would be better variable names. Okay, so next R would be, again, we'll extract the R's out of it. So left on line by 2. So now we're getting 2 characters for the next R. Alright, now in the next R it would have stored 15, and the current R has 8. So the next thing you have to do is you have to make a comparison. If the value of next R is equal to the value of current R, then what we have to do is we simply have to increment the count, right? This is what the question says, that for each R you have to count. So I'll say count is equal to count plus 1. Okay, so if the R's do not match, what do we do? So I read the R and I compared the value with it, and if they do not match, what we can simply do is we can just, they're saying that for each R when pictures are taken, output a suitable message showing the R and the total number of pictures taken within that specific R. So for now we can, okay, in the else part we'll actually print the value, and we'll print the R's as well. Or the other thing you can actually do here is you can just run the loop for the whole file as you've done here. So this will keep on running until you have seen the whole file, right? And then you can check how many R's did it actually match, and then you can keep on resetting the count to 1 over and over again. Totally up to you, however you want to do it. So in this case, I'm just using the simple logic. I'll just reset the number of count to 1, and I'll just keep on resetting the next R to the current R. Or like I said, you can use the other method. That would be, so the method 2 could be that you can compare current R against next R for the whole file, and then you have to restart the process. Okay, so if that is not the case, then what we have to do is we'll just simply output in the format they've written. So R is 15, so R would be, we'll have a colon space, then it will be followed by the current R we have, yes, current R, then we'll have total colon space, and then we'll have the count here. This is exactly what they've told us in the paper, so we'll be using that logic. Now at this point what will happen is we have compared 8 with 15. So this was the current R and this was the next R, right? So what we're going to do now is, now we will simply make this the current R. Okay, so now we will compare 15 with the values ahead, and we are resetting the count to 1 because we want to keep on doing this process over and over again for all the R's in the file. So next time this becomes the current R, or this would be the next R, and again this current would become this next, so on and so forth. So we'll keep on comparing it with the values ahead, and then eventually you will have a total count of the R's that were part of the file. All right, so here I'll set the current R to the next R, and then for every R we have to reset the count to some value. So the count was set to, okay, we didn't set the count, okay, we'll initialize it later. So I'm setting the count here to some question mark. I'll do it at the end depending on the logic that we make. Okay, and then we have the end while here. All right, now once outside the end while, here since this is the first time that we've read, we also need to output the last R from the file, right? So whatever the last R would be, let's say if it is whatever the R is, we have to output its count as well. So we do that once. So we'll write output R, and then the same logic, R comma R, this would be current R, and then we have the total colon, and then this would be count as well again, and then read file, open file, and yes, we have to close the file, close file F, like this. Okay, now the only thing left is the declarations. So for declarations, what we have to do is we have to write all the variables that we use. So we first of all used F as a string. So all the strings that we have used, we can use them, we can declare them in one line. So we have F, we have line, and we have, okay, that's all. Then we have the counters. So declare count as an integer. Let's see how many integers did we use. We have the, okay, we have the next R and the current R as well. So next R and the current R. So they're all strings as well. And the integers were only count, I believe. So count is the only integer, yes. All right. So this is fine. Now we need to set the value of count as well. Okay. Since we have already read one line, so whatever the R is here, let's say it's 8, the count would already be set to 1 because we've read it once. So we're setting the count to 1 here. And since we have set it 1 here, so we have to use the same logic and we'll set it to 1 here as well. And with this, we would have completed the code for question 5B. All right. So again, this is one of the many possible solutions that you can use for this problem. So you can use any logic, any problem solving method that you know of, as long as it is correct and as long as it is logically sound, you would be getting full marks for that. Okay, the next question we have is question 6. So this is a trace table question. I believe it's not that difficult. Okay, we can do this in a bit. Let's do the theoretical part. So the operation carried out by the okay, let's skip this for now. Let's do this question 7. This is the main question, the final question that is usually the tough one. All right, so in the question 7, they're saying that a loyalty program is being developed. So we'll highlight the important stuff. Again, these scenario-based questions, the most important thing is that you have to comprehend the question properly and you have to note down all the important details because they are always spread apart in the question, and that is just one of the many ways they want to confuse you. A program is being developed to implement a customer loyalty scheme for a coffee shop. Each customer has a unique customer ID starting at 1001. Okay, so we can keep taking notes as well. So let's say we can say maybe customer ID starting from 1001, 0001, I believe, 0000. Okay. And we will be increasing the value by 1 each time a new customer joins. All right. For example, the third customer who joins will be given an ID of 1003. Okay. The loyalty scheme is limited to 1000 customers. Okay. Very important. So if the starting ID is 1001, so the end ID would be 1001 plus 1000, which should give us, let's quickly Google. Or we can do this just directly. So this should just make it 1 and then this should be 000, right? So that should be the correct answer. All right, so this would be your ending ID. And again, this was a very common mistake in the paper because a lot of students forgot about this part in the validation check, that you had to check that the ID was actually between the starting ID and the ending ID, which was let's say 10,001 and the ending ID was 11,000. So extremely important that you remember this stuff. A customer is awarded a loyalty point, so there is only one loyalty point. The program has decided to use a global 2D array. Okay, so whenever you see the word global, that means that it has already been declared and initialized for you. So you just have to use it directly. Okay, so you're not going to change the value, you're not going to declare it, you're not going to initialize it, you're just going to apply it in the program. So it's loyalty and it's of type integer. Okay, the array loyalty is made up of 1000 rows and 2 columns. Each row relates to one customer. Column 1 contains the unique customer ID and 2 contains the number of loyalty points. Okay, again, whenever we get questions like this, we must always visualize these problems. So I'll just copy this here. Okay, so they're saying we have 1000 rows. Okay, so I'll just make it till 1000, and this would be column 1, this would be column 2. Column 1 contains the unique customer ID and column 2 contains the number of loyalty points. So let's start with 10001, 10002, 10003, 10004, 10005, and then let's have random loyalty points. We have 44, we have 55, we have 55, okay, then we have 51. Maybe let's use these values. Okay, let's change this to 56 maybe, and then this should be 77, maybe random values. Okay, so this also goes all the way till 1000. Okay, again, always make dummy values to understand the output of the program. Okay, so it is actually very helpful, especially in pseudocode when you don't really when you can't really test the solution. Okay, so rows in the array loyalty that are not currently being used have the column value set to penta9. Okay, so this could be a penta9 maybe, and then this could be a penta9 as well, but I believe they would all be okay. The array is sorted in ascending order by customer ID. Okay, since it's all sorted, so it's not possible for penta9s to be apart, so they would actually be all clustered together towards the end, right? So something like this. Okay, now they're saying ascending order here as well, so it's maybe some hint of bubble sort in the question. Okay, so the first module in the question is about find customer, which will be called with the parameter of integer representing a customer ID. Okay, so let's create this. We are doing question 7 right now. So we have find customer. Then let's see, if it returns a value, then it would be a function. If it is not returning a value, it should be a procedure. So searches the loyalty array for this ID. Okay, this should be some sort of a linear search. The search will stop as soon as the customer ID is found, so it has to be efficient. The search should efficiently deal with the situation when the value is not stored in the array. Okay? So as soon as you find the value, you will exit the searching, and then if the value is found, return an integer representing the loyalty points, otherwise -1. Okay, now what does this mean? So let's say I'm searching for 10003. So what we have to do is we have to start from the first row, first column. Is it equal to 10003? No. Go to second row? No. Go to third row? You found it. Now you return the points, which would be 77 in our case. And if you don't end up finding it, so what you have to do, the question specifically says that it should be dealt with efficiently. Now the efficiency here would mean that the first penta9 that you see is the indication that the customer ID does not exist, right? So that's the whole efficient solution. So you look for the penta9. As soon as you see one penta9, that means that you'll stop. Or even another solution could be, let's say you're looking for maybe 10005 and the value is not there, it's directly, let's say 10007. So since it becomes greater than the current value, so then that could also mean that you can just exit the searching part. Okay, so keeping all of this in mind, we can start writing the solution. Since it says that you have to return, it means this should be a function, and now we have to write the function here. So again, we are doing question number 7. Okay, so it should be function. The name of the function would be find customer. So find customer, case sensitivity must be used always. And then they're saying call with the parameter of type integer representing a customer ID. So you can name it anything. Let's call it customer ID, and it should be represented as an integer, and it will return an integer as well. And then you have to write end function as well. If you do miss end function, you will lose 1 mark, which is again a very common mistake in the exam. Okay, then in the next part we have to assign the starting ID and the ending ID. So let's say the start ID is 10001 and the end ID is 11000, because this would be in place to make sure that you do not enter any invalid ID. Let's say if somebody ends up inputting 1 million, so that should be flagged. So I'm leaving the space for declaration. So declaration, go here, we'll do it towards the end. Okay, and then we'll have, okay, so let's start. So first of all, we have to check if the customer ID is valid or not. So that is very simple. You just check if the customer ID is less than the start ID, or the customer ID that the user inputted is greater than the end ID. If that is the case, then you will return -1 and you end if simply like this, right? So that's the first thing we have to do. And in the second part,
Why not include an else if? Else.
we don't need an else here. You can do it, because if it returns -1 here, then the function will instantly end, right? So you can just write it after the end if as well. Okay, so the next part, now we have to do a simple linear search. So what we have to do is we'll fix the column number, which would be column 1, and we are looking for the customer ID that the user has inputted, let's say 10003. So we compare each and every row of column 1, and as soon as we end up finding it, we will return, or as soon as we end up finding the penta 9. So the two conditions here would be, so the conditions are finding the penta 9 or finding the value customer ID that we're looking for. And for that we have to use a conditional loop. For loop cannot be used because we do not know when it would exactly end. So you can use a repeat until loop here, or you can use a while loop here. It's totally up to you. So let's use a while loop here maybe, or let's use repeat until this time. So repeat until the customer. Okay, so when do we repeat until? So until the name of the array is loyalty. So until loyalty current index, whatever we have the row number, and column 1, right? Because we are looking for the values in the first column. This is the first column we're looking at. Until the values in the first column becomes equal to, at any specific row, it becomes equal to the value that we are looking for. It could be customer, which would be customer ID. So it could be, let's say again 10003. So wherever we end up finding it, this could be the case. We'll stop the search, or the value in the current row, column 1, ends up going to penta 9. So let's say if we are looking for 10010, 10010, and let's say if that is not in the first column, so eventually you'll reach the first penta 9, and as soon as you reach that, that means that the value does not exist. So this could be a condition, again one of the many possible solutions that you can use. Alright, so if that is the case, if let's say loyalty row comma 1 becomes equal to the customer ID at some point, then the question says, then you have to return the value in the second column. So you have to return the Yes, you have to return the loyalty points, which would be 77 in our case if you're looking for 10003. So just the column 2 for the current row. So I'll just write return loyalty row comma 2. So this should return me the loyalty points, right? Okay, if that is not the case, so what do we have to do is we simply have to go to the next row. So else, if that is not the case, so I'll say row is equal to row plus 1, and we do end if, right? Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much the idea. Okay, now we have to do one more thing. That is, if we do not end up finding the value, then that means we have to return -1. Okay, so for that to happen, we should introduce a variable. So when we end up finding the value, we will update its value, the Boolean flag or whatever we want to use. And then after the loop here, we can check if value or if the customer ID not in array. So let's create some Boolean for that, and we can then actually just replace this condition with the flag. Let's call it found until found becomes equal to true. And then if we end up finding it, so we set the found equal to true here before we return the value, because if you return, then the code written after return would work because the function would just literally stop at this point. So we set the found to false. Again, this is just an assumption, assuming value is not in array or the customer ID is not in the array. So keeping that in mind, yeah, so we said, let's say we end up finding the value. We were looking for 10003, 10003, yeah, and we end up finding it. So at row 3, so we end the column 2, and if we do, and then we'll set this found to true. So we'll set that the value has been found. And if we set it to false initially, then that simply means that if you do not find the value that you're looking for, the customer ID, then this condition would never run. When it never runs, then this found would never become true. So if it never becomes true, then this value remains false that we set to false initially. So you can check it outside the loop. You'll say if value is not found, if found remained false throughout. So if it was set to false initially, and even after running the whole loop, it never became true, so that means that value is not in the array. So, or you can just write if not found. It simply checks if the value is false. Then you are going to return -1 and if. And if the value was found at any point, then the loyalty points would have been returned from column 2. And this loop would have ended as soon as you would have found the value or the customer ID actually reached penta 9. And with this, the whole program is done. We have covered everything that they were supposed to cover in this program. This was an 8-mark question, by the way. And the last thing for today, so quickly, this hopefully should be easier than the one before. Okay, so in part B, the customer can claim a free coffee for every 11 points. The programmer has defined a second program module. You have to create a module program reports, outputs the customer ID for each customer who has 11 or more loyalty points, and output the average loyalty points for all the customers in the loyalty array along with an appropriate message. Write efficient pseudocode. Okay, so always read the lines before and after the given question. So this is usually very important context that students often overlook. Assume the array contains data for at least one customer. So efficient again means that you have to use some sort of a conditional loop, and it must stop as soon as goal has been reached. Okay, so customer can claim a free coffee for every 11 loyalty points. Okay, that means that if you have 11 points, you get 1 coffee. If you have 22 points, you get 2, you get 3, 33, you get 3, 44, you get 4. And let's say if you have maybe, yeah, so that's the idea. So this is just multiples of 11, and you can already see some sort of div or mod being used here. Right? Okay, now we'll be doing question 7, part B. Okay, so for part B, the idea is pretty straightforward. We just have to look through the whole array. Again, it says efficiently, so in our case, the efficient method would be to stop as soon as 999 found in customer ID, right? So if you find a customer ID that is penta 9, then you stop, or whole array iterated, so that would be 1000 rows have been iterated. And since the return keyword has not been used here, it means that this would just be a simple procedure. So let's start. We'll use the same logic here that we used, repeat until. So question 7b, again, this would be a procedure now because no values are supposed to be returned. Points report, and then we have the end procedure without the brackets. Okay, so we'll leave the declarations for now. I'm leaving the space for that. Declarations. I think we didn't declare the values. Yes, we missed them. So let's quickly do that. Declare start ID, end ID as this would be integer. Then declare found as Boolean. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, declarations, we're leaving them. Okay, so again, we have to use the repeat until. So repeat until, okay, until the loyalty current row column 1 is becomes equal to penta 9, right? Or until the row number becomes greater than 1000. Why are we doing this? Because again, this 2D array has 1000 rows. So either we end up running into penta 9, that means the value does not exist. Some values do not exist for customer IDs, or it's possible that there are 1000 customers in the 2D array, which means there wouldn't be any penta 9s, which means there would be some other values. So we would be going through all the values till the end. So both possibilities could exist like this.
Sir, can you give me some practice papers for these?
What?
Can you give me some what's the chapter called?
This is just programming with all the concepts involved. You can only practice it in the past papers.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. So we'll be doing a lot of
Yeah.
practice. You don't need to worry. Okay. So
Yeah.
repeat. We have this value. So until we have seen all the rows, or until we come across any penta 9, again, you can just look at the dummy values here. So as long as that is not the case, what we have to do is we have to check if the current loyalty points are greater than 11. So it says who has 11 or more loyalty points. So let's say somebody has less than 11 points, maybe 9, maybe 10. So they get a free coffee, but person 2 does not, person 3 would, person 6 does not, person 9 does, etc. So this is what you have to do here. I'll just say if the loyalty current row column 2, if the value is greater than or equal to 11. This is the checking if loyalty points are as per the criteria. This is again just for reference. I'm just skipping this. Then if that is the case, so we are going to output the current customer ID number, which would be in row column 1. So let's say this is the person who had more than 11 loyalty points, so we just print their customer ID, which would be 10001, and we should also just write that before, just for reference. So we can say customer ID, comma, and this would bring out the customer ID. Okay, so this prints customer ID, and then we simply end if. Okay, then now the final part of the question also says that you have to output all the loyalty points and the average of them. So we have to keep summing these points as well. So I'll just say sum or total is equal to total plus the current number of points, which would be loyalty. And also this is one important thing, it says for all customers. It doesn't say for the ones who have more than 11. So for all customers, you just simply add the value in the current row and column 2. And similarly, you also have to increment the count by 1 because you do not know how many customers are there, because there could be some values which could be penta 9s. That means these the values are empty. The customers do not exist yet on these values. And we do count plus 1, and so this would be the number of active customers in the program. And then lastly we have the row number, right? So we said until the row becomes greater than 1000, so we have to increment the row as well now. So they are 3 separate counters. So this is the current row number of the 2D array. Really important. So again, total for totaling.
Sir, we've done two.
I'm just almost
Mind,
done.
you can continue.
Yes, so then we're doing plus 1 for the number of active customers, and then we're doing row plus 1 because this is the total number of rows that we have to look at. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all of that stuff. All right, once we are done with this, then we simply have to find the average, and in order to find the average, we leave the loop, and then we say average is equal to the total divided by the count of the values, and then we output, let's say average loyalty points would be average. Okay, and now declarations. One very important thing to remember here is that if you're using average, and it must be declared as real, and if you're using an average variable without actually declaring it, so you lose 1 mark for that. So please make sure that you're always declaring the average that you're using and also as a real value. So average goes as a real, then we have the total, then we have the count, then we have the row, which would all be integers like this, right? And with this we are done with part 7b as well. And then some theoretical questions. This would be the last of the paper. So question C, part 1, explain why the 2D array loyalty can no longer be used. The programmer decides to amend the customer ID. It will be stored as a string instead of an integer. Explain why 2D array loyalty can no longer be used. Okay, if you look at the 2D array that they've mentioned before in the question, it is an integer array, right? And then in an array, you're only supposed to store one type of data, not two. So this would be the answer, that the loyalty array can only store one type of data, which would be string in our case. So that's the answer. You're always supposed to use the context that is given in the question, and then explain how 1D array could be used to store both the loyalty points and the amended customer ID. Okay, so a customer ID has become a string and loyalty points are integer. So what you can do is that you can just convert your loyalty points into a string, and then you can append them into an array. So let's say you have your points, let's say you have 30 points, 40 points, you have 50 points. So you just convert them into strings like 30, like 40, and then you can concatenate all of them, and then you can just store them in a string array. So that could be the answer, and there could be multiple answers here as well. So you can just write that you convert the loyalty points to string and join with the customer, with respective customer ID like this. So whatever the customer ID is, you'll join them. So you have customer ID, let's say 10001, so you'll literally join them together like this, and then you will store them in an array, and then store the, let's say, the joint string in a new array of strings. So the array will look something like this. You'll have 1 0 0 1, and then the points 30 at one index, then at another index maybe 1 0 0 0 2, and then there are 45 points in the second index, so on and so forth. Now you can store them together, right? So with this, the paper is done for May June 2025, paper 2.2. So that's all. Thank you.